Lancia Delta. The two began the third day first equal, a unique situation in World Championship rallying.
We had a wet and awful in the Mancassi stage. So I had 250. Put your hands on 2-minute intervals and then on until the last car goes.
Okay, I don't have so much experience, but I have learned the car quite well, and I have been here 3 times before, so.
Well, we seem to be having problems.
Looked a winning technique. They worked on their cars before sending them to a special stage. Lancia was different. They serviced their cars after they'd been thrashed. No fewer than 3 Lancias were chasing the leading Peugeot, and the French team director was a little nervous.
Well, it has been a very difficult rally, difficult fight with Lancia, because we were 1 car against 3 due to Timo's accident. And of course, it's a very big pressure on the team, but of course, particularly on Juha Kankkunen's shoulders.
Juha Kankkunen, the driver who trebled his lead by midday, was all nerves and concentration. Juha Pyörönen, his co-driver, was more relaxed.
You get really excited and you have a fantastic feeling also yourself, because you know that somebody is pushing you all the time. It's not just driving and waiting the rally to finish.
Tony Teasdale's MG Metro struggled to regain the leading New Zealander position, but he stopped just after midday, and Neil Allport in a Mazda RX-7 kept the title. The 16th New Zealand Rally has been labelled by experts the closest contest ever. The Ericsson Volkswagen Golf GTI dominated Group A. And it ended with Peugeot's Juha Kankkunen and Juha Pyörönen overall and Group B winners.
In the last day,
Winner in his haste to finish the event and lead. He'd nearly smashed into a forestry vehicle that strayed onto the course. The Lancia spokesman blamed the organisers.
The driver wanted the clerk of the course or somebody come to see what happened. The answer from the clerk of the course was, if you don't follow the instruction, penalties will be applied. Now my answer is, what kind of penalty will be applied to the organizer in case that the accident will happen?
Alain's near miss reportedly unnerved him and he finished second. But even Kankkunen, the rally winner, almost crashed into a slow lead car at one special stage. The 2 incidents have organisers worried.
I'm always concerned, regardless of a problem or not a problem, simply because I know that we're the weak link in the chain as far as their world calendar is concerned. But we must also not lose sight of the fact that it is a world championship, and if they run the whole of the championship in Europe, they better start calling it a European championship, and that does give us some strength.
The winning Peugeot team. New Zealand's rally blunders have come at a bad time. FISA's safety consciousness this year and a strong American bid for the rally next year mean this could be New Zealand's last World Championship rally for some time.
England managed to draw.
With a record British crowd looking on, leaders Mansell and Piquet surged off the grid. But behind them, Belgium Thierry Boutsen bounced off a safety barrier and into the path of the following pack. Seen from the trackside, Paddock Hill Bend instantly turned into a multi-million-pound scrapyard. 11 cars were left strewn across the track in a tangle of tyres and metal. The race was stopped immediately. But the only serious casualty was 42-year-old Jacques Lafitte, the oldest man in the race, who was trapped in his car for 35 minutes. He was eventually airlifted to hospital with both his legs broken. When the race restarted 85 minutes later, Mansell was driving the Williams backup car because his own machine had broken down. Despite the handicap, he took the lead from teammate Nelson Piquet on the 23rd lap. After that, they dominated the race, lapping Brands at around 133 miles an hour with barely a second between them. To the delight of the vast home crowd, Mansell held on to win as all 5 British drivers finished in the top 9. But the effort of living up to his country's expectations had left Mansell crying with emotion and exhaustion.
And the Australian Touring Car Championship's also been decided, with the New Zealander Robbie Francevic carrying off the title. In the final race at Oran Park, Francevic only had to finish in the first 10, but he nearly didn't make it. Soon after the start, he almost crashed into a fence, but defending champion and fellow Kiwi Jim Richards led him through.
George Fury began at the head of the field with Peter Brock second off the grid, and that's the way it stayed for the entire 35 laps. It was a race almost without incident, except for the Dick Johnson squeeze on the opening lap.
Forcing his way through.
And the three-way tussle between Gary Bailey, Jim Richards and John Bauer, the only diversion from the George Fury runaway.
As Richards trying to do it all over
Well,
again.
this time they swap some paint, and Bailey catches it. Jim comes off second best.
Robbie Francevic concentrated on staying in the first 8 places. He knew a finish anywhere in the top 10 would clinch the series for him. At the checkered flag, it was Fury first, Brock second, Bauer third. Robbie Francevic came home 6th. That was more than enough to give him and Volvo their first ever Australian Touring Car Championship.
Turn comes up, the checkered flag comes out, and George Fury of Talbalma, New South Wales, will win the battle. Robbie Francevic takes...
Mugello in Italy, and the final round of the 1984 European Touring Car Championship. Ulf Granberg and Thomas Lindström behind the wheel of the 2 Volvos. This was the race that followed Volvo's first victory in the European Touring Car Championship at Zolder in Belgium. They had been in the championship a bare 12 months. 1984 had seen victory in the ETC for Jaguar. Tom Walkinshaw and Wyn Percy taking the honours before Jaguar moved on to the World Endurance Championship, as did Hans Stuck, the victor for BMW here. It was to prove their last win until the Spa 24-hour race. But the Volvos finished in 2nd and 3rd places. Based on this and their victory in Belgium, Thomas Lindström set out in 1985 to win the championship, partnered by the Italian Gianfranco Brancatelli. From an early stage of the season, it was obvious that the Volvos were the cars to beat. The combination of the little Italian and the big Swede strode forward to victory. Thomas Lindström takes a philosophical look at the 1985 season.
Even if it looks easy sometimes to win, it's never easy because you have to work very, very hard for it. It takes a lot of time for preparation and a lot of time for testing on each track. If you shall win, if you are satisfied to be 6th to 8th, it's no problem. But if you're going to win, it's very hard work.
Will he be back next year?
I hope that very much because I want to win once more.
And indeed, Thomas Lindström was back in 1985, without Brancatelli and with the cars prepared by the RAS organisation from Belgium. Brancatelli had moved on to the Rover opposition. BMW are back with new modifications and quicker cars. Ford, too, with the Turbo, are a force to be reckoned with. And Holden, with the big Commodore, are here from Australia for the 1986 season. Monza in March, and Volvo and Lindström set out to try and win the championship for the 2nd consecutive time. Ulf Granberg talks with the Frenchman Jean-Louis Schlesser. And as Jeff Allen puts on his helmet, Johnny Cecotto reflects on his first drive, partnered by Thomas Lindström for championship honours, Olofsson driving with Granberg. The Fords, and Klaus Niedewitz talks with Soper.
And then when you start without gap,
The BMW opposition from Schnitzer, a dent in the bonnet at this stage. The Australian opposition, Alan Grice and Graham Bailey, drive the white Holden Commodore, while Peter Brock and Alan Moffat drive the blue and white Mobile One. From the start, it's Rover ahead of the two Volvos. Chicotto at the wheel of car number 1. Schlesser pulls out an early lead, followed by Grice. Then Chicotto, Granberg and 2 more Rovers. Peter Brock's car is not on the pace. Chicotto moves up. Volvo now in the lead and beginning to pull away. And with Volvos appearing to take up where they left last year, Thomas must be feeling his chances of victory in this first round of the championship are good. The Fords here are slow and untried, and slowly but surely, a lead begins to build up. The Rovers sit back and await events, while Ford and BMW fall out over the same piece of road. Coming up towards pit stop time, everything is going well for Volvo. Lindstrom anxiously waits in the pits to take over. The new team get to work, changing wheels and refueling the car. And then disaster. The car won't start. Thomas Lindstrom is left in the pits with a flat battery. Chicotto sympathizes. The battery is changed, but the race is lost. In contrast, the Rover stop is trouble-free. Win Percy takes over, and with spinning wheels, the Coventry car is back on the circuit. Despite the damage, it races on to victory. There's little that Lindstrom can do to improve matters. The delay with the battery, just too much to make up. Walkinshaw and Percy in the lead. Hewson and Allen in second place. And on 5 cylinders, Dieter Questa's BMW succeeds in taking third. The Rover passes the flag, and on to the presentation. I asked Tom Walkinshaw if this was going to be the hardest fight for championship honours yet.
Well, I think it must be, because you've got 5 major manufacturers, all with good cars. You know, you've got cars from General Motors and the Holden, Ford Motor Company with the Sierra, the Volvo, and the BMW gets new homologation through in April, and obviously the Austin Rover car that we drive. So I think you've got 5 really good cars from 5 manufacturers, so I think it's going to be a fantastic championship.
Donington Park. Extreme cold, some rain, and even a smattering of snow at times. And Rovers make the right tyre choice at the start on a slippery circuit. Initially, the 2 Coventry cars lead. But it's Alan Grice with the big 5-litre Holden that keeps them in sight. Volvos struggle with their problem tyres for the circuit. The Rover opposition holds out at the front, but only for a while. When the sun comes out, the Volvos begin to close the gap a little. Rover leads, Walkinshaw number 8, and behind him Schlesser number 7. In third place, it's Alan Grice, 4th Peter Brock, 5th Jeff Allen, and 6th Gerhard Berger. The conditions worsen, and Berger collides with Allen's Rover. Severely damaged, the BMW races on. Now Grice is in the lead. Brock follows him past the Rovers and reverses the situation. The conditions get even worse. The Holdens begin to drop back with electrical problems, and Walkinshaw and Percy are back in the lead. Anders Olesen takes his Volvo out of the pits, followed by the BMW, while Thomas Lindstrom tells us what happened to his.
It's the gearbox. I lost all the gears. I have just the 5th gear left, and it was too much for the clutch in the hairpins and the chicane, so also the clutch is now broken.
In the changeable conditions, the Volvo makes it up as far as 3rd place. BMWs fall out over the same piece of track. Grice's Holden retires, taken into the sand by Bailey, And the BMW, battered or not, finishes second to the conquering Rover once again. Walkinshaw and Percy now have 2 victories. But Lindstrom, another disappointment. Anders Olofsson, however, seems to think that a victory for Volvo is on.
Definitely try to win. We beat those Rovers next time. Great.
And at Hockenheim, in conditions that were even worse than those at Donington, Volvo had their chance. It was snowing and it was cold. Getting the tyres to temperature was the problem. Ford, too, were getting more and more competitive. BMW were on their own home ground. And the Volvos were going to have to work hard. Hockenheim is a very fast circuit. Alan had crashed his car in practice and Grice looks very pensive. I asked Thomas just how fast, therefore, the cars go here.
It was calculating yesterday, it seems to 245 kilometers.
That's pretty quick for a Volvo.
No, it's normal.
This German round of the championship provided the most exciting racing so far. The 2 Volvos and Alan Grice racing wheel to wheel for lap after lap. The Rovers left behind somewhat in this battle, as were the Fords. Sadly, too, BMW were not on the pace. When Grice collided with a slower car, however, all things looked well for Volvo. But then they too had a problem, as car number 2 retired from the race. We spoke to Anders Olofsson.
We could be first or second finish at the finish, and I think it could have been a very tough race at the end of it.
But for Thomas Lindstrom, this race was a different story. Partnered by Johnny Cecotto, Volvo number 1 crossed the line to victory. The presentation, and for the first time, the champion is on the rostrum for 1986. And Johnny Cecotto tells us how he feels.
Well, finally, after 3 races we are trying, finally we got it.
I thought we'd be there at the end. I didn't actually know where we would finish, but obviously I'm very happy to be third. We had to make an extra pit stop, otherwise I think we could have obviously have been second. But we're both, and the whole team, and Klaus and I are both very happy.
Italy, Misano and the Adriatic. The weather has changed, and so have the Volvo driver pairings. Lindstrom now with Granberg, Cecotto with Anders Olofsson. Johnny's views on his prospects.
Yeah, I think it's not bad for our car, but it's very good for BMW, I guess.
Yeah, sure. We have now we have good power. We have very good balance in the car. We have good tires and good brakes. So I think in the race we are very competitive.
The cars are lined up Le Mans style prior to pulling on the grid. The problem here, not to keep hot, but to keep cool, as away they accelerate. Straight into the lead, Ulf Granberg. Rover second, Volvo third. 2 Volvos, 2 Rovers and a Ford fight it out. But this could be a BMW circuit. Prior to the race, Berger was brimming with confidence. The early stages, however, are dominated by the Volvos. Fords finding their handling still not up to par. And the Walkinshaw car prepares for a pit stop as Win Percy waits to take over. Tyres are Rover's problem here. Walkinshaw slams the door. On go the new wheels, out goes the car. Anders Olofsson takes over from Cecotto. He too is back in the race with number 1. The BMW stops and the Ford is pushed away. Revelia takes over from Berger and the BMW is in second place behind Thomas the champion in Volvo number 2. Third place, number 1, Olofsson at the wheel, and fourth place, the Rover. But when Thomas Lindstrom goes into the pits with a broken brake pipe, it's the BMW that takes the lead. Fuel light blinking behind him, Anders Olofsson can do nothing about catching him. In exhausting heat, that's Steven Soper, by the way, BMW crossed the line to victory. Revelia is delighted, and so is Berger.
The button was the beginning slow, look for the engine, look for the car, and then in the end to go hard like Roberto. It was very good.
This is one of the worstest matches I've done ever.
We were all keeping a fair eye to whether you had to come in for some more fuel. Was it pretty tight?
Yes, but then I thought when it was 3 or 4 laps to go, I was 4 seconds after and I could never catch him, so I then backed off.
Tom, a lot of hard work, a lot of flying about and a lot of problems with tyres.
Yeah, but the only Dunlop tyres we didn't have on the car were the ones fitted to the transporter.
The presentation, and once again, the champion is falling behind a little in the points stakes. Back home in Sweden at Anderstorp, perhaps the story will be different. Spectators wait for this their first chance to see the cars in the Swedish round of the championship. And it's Rovers that lead the field away. Walkinshaw, Hana, the 2 Volvos, and then the 1967 world champion Dennis Holm in the white car. They hang on to a precarious lead as Granberg sets about catching them in Volvo number 2. The Swedish car now splitting the 2 Coventry products. And not so far behind, Cecotto with the second of the Nordica cars. In the pits, Gianfranco Brancatelli, Thomas's co-champion, waits to take over car number 7. Meanwhile, Armin Hahn tells us about the Rover plans.
We've got to stop once more, I think. That's just a normal stop. So that means that we should be under the first 3-0 this time. I would like to finish this time.
The Italian rejoins the race with the Rover. But there's drama in the Volvo pit. They've tried to go up to half distance, and the car all but ran out of fuel. Granberg tells us what happens as Thomas rejoins.
The fuel was empty when I come out on the straight. So I take to get into the pit. I must drive very slowly because it's got a route. I have no gasoline, fuel.
The champion sets about regaining the lead. In superb style, Lindström finally struggles back up in front. The Rover's final stop, Hana back at the wheel. Volvo's first and second, Lindström heading Anderson. But they too have to make a quick stop for fuel. As Armin Hana well knows, Walkinshaw locks a wheel in 4th place. He's being pressed hard by Dennis Holm. The final stages, both cars have stopped, and the Volvo's being pressed all the way to the line. Nose and tail round the hairpin, with Hama touching the tail of the Volvo, all but pushing him along to victory. He flashes his lights in anticipation of the checkered flag. Lindström and Granberg win. Thomas is back on the championship trail and tells us no problem.
No problem at all. The car was wonderful the whole time. I really love the treat, very much.
Volvo's first and third, Walkinshaw 4th, and Thomas Lindström gains valuable points. In complete contrast to the other rounds of the championship, the streets in and around Brno are the setting for the next round. The Czechoslovakian circuit seeing its last international race. Volvo through the village at high speed. BMW in the same place. And Rover 2 on the limit. And it's a return too for the Fords, who missed out the Anderstorp round while preparing the cars for here and altering their fuel injection and their suspension. And it seems to have paid off. Steven Soper is fastest in practice. We asked him about the improvement of the car and how he felt.
Yes, very happy actually. Very happy for Eggenberger and obviously Mike and myself and Ford. Very good, that's what we've been waiting for.
And Belgian Pierre de Donne's Ford is also on the pace.
It's a fantastic circuit, and we're all very sorry that this is the last year on this circuit because we just like him. Okay, it's demanding, but that's why we are here for.
The first lap, and Ford lead for the first time in 1986. Soper, with behind him teammate de Donne, then the Volvos, BMWs and Rovers. A huge charge on the inside there by Granberg comes to nothing. Within inches of the Armco, they streak round the circuit. Soper building up a lead, Dodone holding back the opposition. And then they're through. Soper still leads. Behind him, it's Volvo, Rover, Volvo, Ford, Rover. Rovers and Volvos fight it out. Granberg now on Walkinshaw's tail and then Cecotto. All three cars begin to close on the leading four, with Granberg now ahead of the Rover. The Rover's back in front again, and both Volvos are snapping at his heels. Soper's lead is now in jeopardy. Volvo are in front, first and second. Cecotto in the lead, in second place Granberg. The two Swedish cars race on. The Ford is soon to retire with turbo problems, as in comes car number 2 for Lindström to take over. Rovers too make their scheduled stop. Walkinshaw hands over to Win Percy as Lindström goes out onto the track, trailing metal at the back. It's an inter-Volvo fight. Anders Olofsson fighting every inch of the road with Thomas Lindström. Rover in third place. The Ford's out of things now. In the final stages, however, there's a problem for Volvo. Fuel is marginal here. Both cars must make a quick stop. The Rover holds on to third place, as in comes Volvo number 2. Thomas Lindström gets enough fuel. Anders Olofsson doesn't. Lindström rejoins the race, oblivious of this, however. The BMW, meanwhile, has collided with a Mercedes. In the lead, Lindström races on towards victory. The other car all but runs out of fuel and drops back to third. Rover finished second. It's the second successive victory for Ulf Granberg and the reigning champion Thomas Lindström. He's now pulling back points in the championship. But it was a lucky victory for Thomas in Czechoslovakia, as he explains following the presentation here in Brno.
2 laps for finish, I was sure he was second today, and suddenly it changed very quick.
Did you know that he was running out of fuel?
Yes, because I saw his light for the fuel was burning when I passed him, so I understand what he had the problem. Because I make a rather quick pit stop and he make even 5 seconds quicker, which means that he had 2 less of fuel. Because my lamp was also flashing sometimes.
Halfway there, the picturesque Oostenrijk-ring, the 7th round of the championship, on a driver's circuit. And who better to talk about it than the 1967 world champion, Denny Hulme.
The circuit's got slightly rougher, which I've noticed on all the circuits I've been to previously. They got a few more bumps. Old age, I guess, that's what you call it.
Is it a circuit you like?
Yes, it's very, very interesting, very nice, a true road circuit. And I'd like to think they could still build them like this, but it seems they're condensed more and more into an arena, and I don't think that's really where Formula One cars want to be.
At this stage of the 1986 International Touring Car Championship, Lindström has 3 wins with the Volvo, partnered by Cecotto and Ulf Granberg on 2 occasions. Tom Walkinshaw has 2 wins, partnered by Win Percy as usual. Ford have none, but are proving to be top contenders now, with the cars very much more on form and definitely on the pace. Mercedes and BMW are fighting it out in Class 2. The BMW marque also have an overall victory at Misano, of course, for Gerhard Berger and Roberto Ravaglia. Here, however, in Austria, it's very much a driver's circuit and a fast circuit, as Denny Hulme has told us. Win Percy looks pensive at the start. The weather here is always unpredictable, and after wet practice, it's turned out to be a hot day. There could be tyre problems. For Volvo, they're anxious to go into the second half of the championship with yet another win to their credit. But Lindström and Granberg look relaxed enough prior to the start. Away they go, and straight away it's a challenge for the lead between Rover and Volvo once more. Ford too trying to get in on the pace, and BMW right with them as well. In close proximity like this, it's easy to make a mistake. A Volvo clips a Rover. BMW ends up in the field. No real harm done, but a lot of time lost. In front, however, once again, it's a Volvo-Rover battle. Cecotto is determined to get ahead. He does so, and Granberg follows. Ford's pit stop is a slick one. Car number 4 is running well. Everyone else, however, is afflicted by fuel feed problems. In comes Volvo number 1, and there's Olofsson to take over. Granberg races on, but he too must come in for tyres, fuel, and for Thomas Lindstrom to take over. Jeff Allen comes to a temporary halt, adjacent to Walkinshaw's abandoned car. The laps and the minutes tick away. Volvo are in charge. Cecotto and Olofsson lead. Granberg and Lindstrom are in second place, while De Doy and Muller in the fourth, despite the loss of fourth gear, move up to third. Volvo's first and second at the halfway stage. The presentation, and Olofsson tells us how he feels.
First and second is tremendous. I can't really believe it.
Ziggy Muller tells us about his race for Ford.
It didn't look very bad, my feeling was if there was a fourth gear, we were much more in front and we might be able to follow the Volvos.
The halfway stage of the 1986 International Touring Car Championship. Wyn Percy leads with 134 points, Tom Walkinshaw second with 121, Thomas Lindstrom third with 120, Johnny Cecotto fourth with 117. On the manufacturer's side, it's Volvo, Rover, BMW, Ford and Holden. Halfway there, now we'll go.
Sunday, July 13, and our 7 sports team bids you welcome from Oran Park Raceway, venue for the 10th and final round of the Australian Touring Car Championship. Oran Park is located 45 kilometres southwest of Sydney at Narellan. This well-appointed motorsports facility incorporates a 2.62 kilometre Grand Prix circuit, a 1.9k short track, and provision for drag racing, karting, and one of the most spectacular motocross layouts to be found anywhere. Today's Castrol Touring Car finale comes down to a head-to-head battle between Tal Malmo farmer George Fury in the Nissan Skyline and series leader Robbie Francevic of New Zealand in the Turbo Volvo. At the 9 rounds contested, Fury has 4 wins to Robbie's 3. The Aucklander, though, still has an 18-point edge, but he must finish to lock up the crown.
Robbie, baby, Robbie, Robbie! Man, look, you look down, you look depressed. Look, you're all dressed up with no place to go, but you got a place to go. The Australian Touring Car Championship. That's going to be the biggest night of your life. You got to be a winner, just like Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South is. You're in first place now. This old farmer is trying to catch up with you, man. You can't let this farmer catch up with you. Don't be in shock.
I can't understand it. For 18 months I've been telling everyone. I am the greatest.
Today's grand final has produced the biggest field of the season. Peter Brock, John Harvey, Graham Crosby and Peter McLeod head the Commodore attack. The JPS BMW boys are here in force, while the Nissan and Volvo number 2s could play a vital role in who wears the National Group A crown for the next 12 months.
G'day. You know, this Oran Park is a real cow of a place, and I mean that literally, because the racetrack is located on dairying property owned by the Lippington Pastoral Company. Of course, the prize exhibit here today is the deciding round of the Touring Car Championship, with the Kiwi Robbie Francevic threatening to skim the cream off the Aussie title. The only man who can stop him is Farmer Fury, who should feel right at home here in the fresh air and wide open spaces. But there are one or two others who'll keep them busy. Peter Brock could tip the bucket on him in this Castrol Grand Final. Or Jim Richards. You know, he's not here just to chew the cud. And look out for Graham Crosby or Dick Johnson. They could be past your eyes before you realise. But after qualifying, this is how they'll line up for the Oran Park finale. Fury has churned out a record lap to take pole position in the Nissan Skyline ahead of Brock's Mobile Commodore. Volvo's John Bowe shares the second row with Graham Bailey's Chickadee Commodore. Then comes Jim Richards in the JPS BMW and Graham Crosby's Systime Commodore, followed by Dick Johnson in the Mustang, and then the title front-runner for Volvo, Robbie Francevic.
Time by 2/100ths of a second from Graham Watson. So we're going to see an interesting race, and it's on the short circuit over 15 laps here today at the Castrol Grand Final at Sydney's Oran Park Raceway.
Graham Watson there, car number 9, alongside Peter Hopwood in 22 revs, building the field away hot. A great start from Terry Ryan in the second row of the grid. By G, he got away well in the orange car. He splits Hopwood and Watson as they go down towards the left-hander on this shortened circuit. Oh, and Ryan locks a brake. Watson out very wide, loses some ground, and Hopwood in car 22, the Menage entry, comes out in front.
How lucky was Graham Watson, though? He got carted basically off the circuit that time. However, Peter Hopwood will lead them up past the 2WS Family Hill, down into the dip now, and Terry Ryan is very close to him. Here they go over the top now, and Graham Watson, who was shuffled back, has lost probably all 30 or 40 metres in that run as they come out of Castrol Corner. With one lap completed, now 14 remain. Peter Hopwood in front, though.
Hopwood back in third place in the Australian Drivers' Championship at the moment. There's Peter McCrow in the newly painted car 25 in blue and white colours. This is Watson, the Ignis entry. He's third. He's, in fact, leading the Australian Drivers' Championship with 29 points, 8 clear of Bap Romano, who I believe is back in Westmead Hospital, having had the pins removed from his ankle. So, Bap, good luck. Hope things go well for you. Hope to see you back shortly. But your team leader at the moment's got a lot of work ahead of him. He's down about 2 seconds on Terry Ryan, making a welcome return to racing. We haven't seen him since the Adelaide round of the Gold Star, where he broke an engine. And as they come down to end their second lap, it'll be Hopwood in 22. From Ryan 36, then Graham Watson. And behind him in fourth position, Keith McClelland in car 8. And there's Hopwood, the leader.
Well, Hopwood's theory for this race on the short track was to win the start and go for broke. He was very, very, he was helped along the way, I should say, by Terry Ryan, who finished up with Graham Watson almost out on the grass on the exit of the first turn. So Watson has still a lot of work to do, still probably 20 or 30 metres back behind the leading duo as they come down once again to Castrol. Meantime, Graham Watson running in third with 5 laps to go in this 15-lap round of the Mondial Gold Cup. The Alpha Couriers race here today at Sydney's Oran Park.
One more round to run in this series, so it'll be interesting when they get to Amaroo Park on August the 3rd, which will be one of our 7 Sports telecasts. Be there for the Better Breaks 300. And with only 8 points between Watson and Romano, and then a further 3 points back to Peter Hopwood, still any man's guess as to who can come out the Australian driving champion. This is our 4th place driver, Keith McClelland, car 8.
Yes,
that's the gap, third to 4th. Graham Watson in the yellow entry, the Ignis car. Meanwhile, Peter Hopwood still wheeling away quite nicely.
Car 16 is Brad Wright in the second half of the field. And there's quite a battle going on back there between this lot. George Parkinson tucked in behind him in 17. And there in 22 is Peter Hopwood.
He's stretching out nicely as they run down the straight to the left-hander. Has opened that gap on Terry Ryan by probably 100 metres or so, probably even more than that.
Yeah, quite sudden it was. So yep. I think, I don't know whether Ryan might have been held up by a slower car or something.
I think as they dropped into the dog leg, Hopwood was able to get around the outside of those slower cars, and Terry decided not to go charging in over the top of them. Once again to Castrol, the exit to that turn. Coming across the strike now, and it'll take a miracle, I think.
Yeah, that's the gap now.
Big gap
substantial.
Now. 2 laps remaining in this Alpha Couriers round of the Australian Mondial Gold Star Championship from Oran Park.
4.9 seconds back to Ryan, and that time through I heard him miss a gear in front of our commentary point, so he might have struck some gearbox problems, but he's certainly falling back into the clutches of Graham Watson, who's got McClellan bearing down on him pretty quickly as well.
Dropping down over the dogleg now with about 1.5, 1.25 laps remaining. Sydney driver Peter Hopwood in the Menage Rolt, car number 22. Will take the signal. 1 lap to go for Peter, and he's looking good for points here in the Gold Star round today.
Yes, there's 9 points for a win. That would shuffle him on to 27. Hopwood found some more horsepower in the car from the Winton round of the Gold Star. It was on the dyno at about 208 brake horsepower for that round, and they've increased the compression in the engine, and they're up to around about 220 for this weekend. And so obviously it's been horsepower that's made a big difference, and he's particularly confident on this circuit as he comes down to Castrol, locks up a brake through the left-hander.
And he'll be coming up now, looking for the checkered flag. And Peter Hopwood in the number 22 Menage Rolt cruise that was going to be a close shave in today's race at Oran Park Raceway. And there he is before a huge crowd here at the Western Sydney circuit. He's taken top points, 9 points towards the Gold Star Championship, and would be satisfied indeed with his performance today. Let's recap the placings for you on the Castrol scoreboard. Peter Hopwood is your race winner. Second spot goes to Terry Ryan, and third goes to Graham Watson.
Cars are lining up on the grid for the Formula Ford event here, and this is another round of the Motorcraft Formula Ford Driver to Europe Series, round 6, and this is the way they line up on the grid. David Stanley has pole position, sharing the front row of the grid with Richard Carter. Second row sees Andrew Burton in third position alongside David Brabham, then Peter Verreyen and Alan Bissett on the next row of the grid, followed by Mark Poole and Gary Jones, then Roger Martin and Warwick Rookland. He's way down today. And then Jeff Walters and John Cook making up the top half dozen.
Incidentally, we'll be using the Grand Prix circuit for this event. It's 2.61 kilometres in length. 10 seconds to go. There's David Brabham, a picture of concentration. The revs building in these identically powered Formula Ford cars. National flag raised, and the field gets away. Brabham made a good start, so too Dave Stanley, and Stanley leads them away. Richard Carter second, Andrew Burton up into third, then it would be Brabham, and they make this long run down the straight through the left-hand kink.
Here comes Dave Stanley. Richard Carter poised on the outside. Some of the cars doing a few funny things under brakes.
Roger Martin, car 4, very close to our camera there. The green car, of course, is Jeff Walters. Big field of cars. Andrew Burton on the left-hand side of screen in the white car. So it is Stanley as they head down towards Bitchapave in car 9, the Elwyn. Then Richard Carter. There's Burton.
Now they're going through Bitchapave corner, working their way up to the Goodyear Bridge. Here they come across the bridge. Give you an idea of the amount of traffic in this opening lap of the Motorcraft Formula Ford Driver to Europe Series.
David Brabham, car 48 behind Andrew Burton, who incidentally has got glandular fever this weekend. So he's running with a bit of difficulty at the moment. And there's the shot from Racecam, and Gary Jones has had some problems on the opening lap. Front of the car looking pretty second-hand. He's certainly been in the wars in the last few weeks. Oh, the car's got pretty bad understeer there. You saw how far away from the apex of the turn he was.
I guess destroying the nose cone didn't help the handling of the car.
No, that's for sure. There's Andrew Burton making a move now for second placing. David Brabham fourth. He's coming under attack as well, and I think Burton has got through. Good drive from him. So it is Stanley from Andrew Burton in car 3. Richard Carter dropping back a spot. You'll recall the last time we visited Amaroo Park that Carter launched himself over Jeff Walters. In fact, he's been trying to get the car right since then. They twisted the chassis. And yesterday discovered a crack in the gearbox as well, probably all as a result of that crank. So it's taking some time to get the car organised and straightened up again. Terrific shot from our bridge cam as the field roars underneath the Goodyear Bridge, and there's Andrew Burton getting in a little stripe as he wanders just a fraction wide. The man to watch in this one, though, I think will be David Brabham in car number 48.
He's up into fourth spot already.
And he's closing that gap as well behind Richard Carter. So Stanley pulling away. This is Burton in second, then Carter. There is Brabham. you an idea of how close those three are. Terrific class of racing. And they now go through their process of trying to shake one another out of the slipstream down the main straight. Look how long that run is down the straight. David Brabham getting a little nervous under brakes as he goes through the kink, and then it's hard on the picks for the left-hander underneath the Goodyear Bridge. And this right-hander is a fairly deceptive turn.
This, of course, I was going to mention, is the part of Oran Park that's used for the karting. So it might be difficult to understand a few of those asphalt crisscrosses in the middle of it.
Yeah, there's a few options, isn't there?
Brabham goes over the top of the Goodyear Bridge as we pick up on Dave Stanley, setting up a good lead at this stage over Andrew Burden. Then, of course, Richard Carter amongst them, and young Brabham staying in touch with the leaders. Good to see Bob Jane, who, of course, supports our Touring Car Championship telecast with $1,000 for pole position. And Gary Rogers, who drives the Bob Jane T-Mart's BMW, a non-starter in today's round after misdemeanor with a concrete wall here yesterday.
Now, incidentally, the leader is wandering down the main straight. Andrew Burden in car 3 with the field bunching up behind him again, so it's certainly a long way from over as Gary Jones enters the main straight. That gives you some idea of the gap, and there he is, Andrew Burden from Canberra. As I said before, with a big dose of glandular fever this weekend. They broke a wishbone, or should I say a sway bar, on this car in yesterday's practice, and he was a little slower in qualifying than he had hoped, but he's now well and truly on the pace. Car's going everywhere.
Yeah, it's a good shot, that. Shows the car's working the new GP section of the racetrack, and then, of course, moving on to the back straight.
This car that Burden is driving is a Van Diemen, built in England, called an RF82, one of the earlier series cars, predecessor to the type of car that David Brabham is driving. So it is Burden with quite a reasonable gap again now. He's pulled away just a little from David Brabham, who's been the mover in the field. They got close to him just before they got close to Burden, I should say. And now the gap's opened again.
He certainly has opened the gap.
Then it's a fairly healthy gap back to Richard Carter in the Maytag. You hear those tyres on the Formula Ford squealing as they come through the left-hander at Castrol. Car 73, is that? In stride. Certainly the back end of it not looking too flash.
The Mully Pub entry.
Mark Seaton, I think. Burden at the bottom of the straight.
5 laps remaining in this race.
Well, they got really close to him before Wilco, and now he's opened up the gap again, so he's driving brilliantly for a man who's off colour. There's Brabham.
I reckon 5 laps is enough for Brabham to get close, though. I think he was held up in the slower traffic. They have already lapped a couple of slower cars.
Well, he's done pretty well. He came off